Subscribe because it's free.
Humanity's delegation gathered in the grand chamber of the Galactic Concord, where the weight of countless years of negotiation hung in every measured word. The room buzzed with the restrained tension of diplomats representing civilizations whose arrogance had long thrived on human forbearance. Humanity's envoy, a composed figure with a calm but piercing gaze, addressed the assembly in a voice that blended determination with a quiet fury. For centuries, our people have sought to foster understanding through dialogue, even when confronted with threats and disregard. Today, we stand not as the meek, but as an embodiment of measured restraint, a virtue misinterpreted by those who mistake compassion for weakness. There was a murmur among the alien delegates, a mixture of incredulity and concealed anxiety. One voice, slick and confident, replied with a dismissive tone, "Your persistent willingness to negotiate only confirms our understanding of your nature. Why wage war when a simple apology suffices?" The human diplomat's eyes narrowed imperceptibly as they continued. "An apology is a token, a feeble substitute for genuine accountability. Our patience has been tested time and again, and it is not without consequence that we have borne these burdens." In that moment, the diplomat's words resonated through the chamber, each syllable a measured reminder of past transgressions. There was no flourish or dramatic pause, only a calm pronouncement of truth that echoed in the hearts of those who had underestimated humanity's resilience. We have long stood as mediators, a beacon of hope and reason in a galaxy marred by conflict and avarice. Yet, every time our goodwill is met with aggression, every time our outreach is met with exploitation, we are reminded that even the longest well has its limit. We have endured insults, dismissals, and betrayals, all in the hope that rationality might prevail. A subtle ripple of discontent passed through the assembly. The alien representatives exchanged glances, their confidence shaken by the unwavering tone of the human speaker. "Your history is one of bloodshed and conquest." An alien delegate challenged, his voice thick with scorn. "You choose diplomacy because you lack the strength to impose your will. We have known power, and our might has secured us victories that have shaped the very fabric of the cosmos." The human envoy's reply was immediate and measured. "Strength is not merely measured by the force one could exert, but by the restraint one exercises in the face of provocation. Our people have built civilizations on the foundation of peace, on the conviction that progress does not require the endless cycle of war and retribution. It is a choice, a deliberate path forged by our ancestors and carried forward by our resolve." The words fell heavy in the air, each declaration a subtle accusation against the centuries of unprovoked aggression that had defined the interactions among these interstellar powers. "You have misinterpreted our silence for surrender, our calm demeanor for capitulation," the human continued, voice steady and resonant. "Each treaty we have brokered, every conflict we have averted, has been a testament to our commitment to peace. But let it be known that our commitment is not an invitation to be trifled with. We have endured mockery, and we have borne the weight of your indifference with the hope that reason would eventually prevail." The chamber fell into a reflective silence as the human envoy's words echoed in the minds of those present. The diplomat's gaze swept over the assembly, their voice growing firmer with measured intensity. "Remember the incident at Haven, for what was seen by many as a minor setback to be glossed over with words of contrition was, in fact, a grave miscalculation of our willingness to endure. We accepted the immediate pain, not out of submission, but as a calculated decision to preserve life and maintain a diplomatic front. Yet, that decision was not born of weakness. It was born of a hope that justice would prevail through dialogue." A pause, filled with the weight of unspoken memories, ensued. The human continued. "For every apology that was hastily offered, for every excuse provided by those who believed that our silence signified nothing more than grief or regret, know this: our silence is a mirror reflecting the depth of our disappointment. It is a quiet reminder that even the most patient heart can break when repeatedly exposed to injustice." There was no flourish in this statement, just a relentless declaration of the inherent dignity of a people who had chosen to wait, to believe in the possibility of reform even in the face of relentless provocation. As the words cascaded through the assembly, the human diplomat's tone softened momentarily, allowing a glimpse of the sorrow that underpinned the resolve. "Our people have known loss, And our history is marked by sacrifices made in the hope of building a better future. A future where respect is not bought with feigned remorse, but earned through genuine transformation. We have watched as alliances crumbled and empires rose on the backs of our mercy. And yet we persisted, because to abandon our principles would be to lose ourselves entirely. A measured determination filled the air as the diplomat's gaze returned, unwavering. Understand that our actions have always been deliberate. Our decisions, even in moments of despair, are rooted in a long tradition of seeking understanding. However, let it not be misunderstood. There exists a threshold beyond which our restraint transforms into resolute action. We have reached that threshold more times than you can imagine. A quiet, deliberate pause allowed the gravity of these words to settle among the alien delegates. The envoy's next words were not an outright declaration of impending conflict, but rather a quiet, yet unmistakable assertion of human dignity and resolve. Let it be known across every star system, every corner of this galactic assembly, that the human spirit is not a resource to be exploited. We do not bend because we are weak. We bend because we choose to hold our ground with wisdom and strength. Our patience is not infinite, and the universe will one day bear witness to the moment when we decide that enough is enough. There was an almost imperceptible shift in the atmosphere, a collective recognition that the human words were more than mere rhetoric. They were a promise that history would remember this moment as the beginning of a new era, where quiet endurance of one species would forever alter the balance of power among the stars. We come before you not as the meek or the submissive, but as the heirs to a legacy built on endurance, intellect, and the unwavering belief that peace, when sustained for too long, can become a silent weapon of its own. We have labored under the weight of your arrogance, under the assumption that our diplomacy was a sign of frailty. Today, we remind you that our methods, though subtle, are formidable. They are the very embodiment of resolve that has been forged in the crucible of hardship and betrayal. In that charged moment, every word became a testament to the quiet power of humanity's commitment to its ideals, a power that had been underestimated and misinterpreted for too long. We do not seek unnecessary conflict, nor do we revel in the thought of war. But make no mistake, our capacity for measured, decisive action is a force to be reckoned with. Our endurance has its limits. And while we have chosen the path of diplomacy, we have never forsaken the strength that lies beneath our calm exterior. Should our resolve be further tested, we stand ready to act decisively to enforce the justice we have long been denied. The human envoy's final words reverberated with the quiet intensity of a people who have endured beyond measure. This is not a threat, but a promise that the legacy of humanity will be defined not by the wars we avoided, but by the principled stance we upheld. Our history, steeped in struggle and sacrifice, compels us to remind the galaxy that even the longest well of patience will one day run dry. And on that day, the stars themselves will remember the resolve of humanity. The chamber remained silent, the weight of the declaration settling like a dense fog over the gathered delegates. Every alien presence, every watchful eye, now understood that beneath the calm exterior of humanity lay a spirit unyielding and a resolve unbroken by centuries of exploitation. The assembly had been served a clear message, a message of dignity, endurance, and the unspoken promise that the delicate balance of peace was not to be taken for granted. In that silence, the seeds of a new order were sown, one where humanity's measured resolve would soon reshape the very fabric of interstellar relations. Haven, for burned in silence. The colony, once a beacon of human resilience and innovation, now lay in ruins. Millions of lives, obliterated in a single act of unchecked aggression. The coalition of alien species responsible for the attack had expected a swift, predictable response, apologies exchanged, reparations offered, another lesson in humanity's supposed passivity. They had played this game before. But this time, there was no response. No diplomatic envoy. No carefully worded appeal for justice. Just silence. At first, the galaxy dismissed it as grief. The humans, known for their sentimentality, must be mourning their dead. Then the silence stretched into days, into weeks, and an unease spread like a virus through the halls of power. The Galactic Concord, ever eager to maintain an illusion of control, sent inquiries to Sol, demanding a statement. None came. And then humanity vanished. Every human colony, every station, every outpost went dark. Communications were severed. Trade routes were abandoned. Entire star systems were enveloped in an impenetrable blackout. There was no chatter, no distress signals, no military movement. Just a cold, deliberate withdrawal from the rest of the galaxy. For the first time in recorded history, humanity was not speaking. Whispers of fear took root in the minds of the aggressors. Their warships patrolled the edges of human space, scanning for any sign of movement. What they found instead was the impossible. Nothing. The borders of human-controlled space had become a void, an expanse where even light seemed hesitant to travel. And then, the disappearances began. The first to vanish was a scouting vessel belonging to the Zatha Dominion, one of the primary instigators of the Haven 4 attack. It had been monitoring the outskirts of human space when it simply ceased to exist. No distress signal, no wreckage. One moment it was there, the next it wasn't. Days later, a war fleet from the Zoran Imperium, a force of 60 capital ships, attempted to enter the silent void. They never returned. The few transmissions recovered were nothing but garbled screams, followed by static. Panic set in. The aggressors, who had once mocked humanity's patience, now found themselves gripped by a terror they couldn't define. The Galactic Concord convened an urgent session, demanding explanations from the human representatives, only to be met with empty seats. The realization hit like a supernova. Humanity was gone, but they were not idle. Then came the first strike. It wasn't a declaration of war. It wasn't an act of retaliation. It was an execution. A Zathid military command station, positioned light years away from the nearest human colony, was found torn apart, not bombarded, not destroyed by conventional means. It had been dismantled with clinical precision. Airlocks surgically breached, reactors removed, life support systems severed in such a way that those inside would have suffocated before alarms could even be triggered. There was no debris, no trace of an external assault, just silence and an absence where something once stood. The coalition scrambled to respond, deploying more ships, reinforcing their defenses. But the attacks didn't stop. They spread. A Zoran shipyard, the backbone of their fleet production, was reduced to floating rubble overnight. Entire production lines ceased to exist. There were no survivors. A secret military research facility belonging to the Vrake Syndicate, located in an uncharted system far from human space, was wiped from the galactic map. Not a single distress call was sent. Not one soul escaped. The galaxy was beginning to understand. This was not a war. This was not humanity seeking vengeance. This was a message. One by one, the pillars of the coalition that had once ridiculed humanity's patience began to crumble. Their ships vanished before they could mount a defense. Their leaders, once untouchable behind layers of security, were found dead in their own chambers, throats slit, eyes wide with the realization that they had awoken something they did not understand. The Galactic Concord convened again, desperate for answers. We must re-establish communication. A Zathid representative stammered, the confidence in his voice long gone. They are killing us in the dark, and we don't even know how. A Vrake delegate, usually a beacon of arrogance, now trembled as she spoke. We have underestimated them. We believed they would do what they have always done, that they would talk, that they would negotiate. The Zoran warlord, a species known for their brutish strength, leaned forward, his voice a whisper. They are not speaking. They are not listening. They are only acting. The room was silent. The weight of their mistake hung thick in the air. Then, the first human transmission in months arrived. A single message, broadcast across every channel, across every known system, carrying with it the cold finality of judgment. You will never forget what happens when humanity's patience runs out. Let this be your only warning. And then, once again, silence. The silence after the message was deafening. Across the galaxy, entire civilizations held their breath, waiting for humanity's next move. But nothing came. No fleets materialized at the edges of their borders. No formal declarations of war were sent. There was just an eerie, unbearable quiet. The kind that gnawed at the nerves and forced even the most hardened leaders to question their fate. For the first time in history, the galaxy understood what fear truly was. Not the fear of battle, not the fear of conquest, but the fear of something inevitable, a punishment that had already begun, and yet no one knew when or how it would strike next. Leaders of the coalition scrambled to fortify their defenses, throwing resources into shields, fleets, and planetary defenses. But how do you defend against an enemy you cannot see? How do you prepare for a war when you don't even know how it's being fought? And then the executions resumed. A Vrake High Admiral, the mastermind behind the haven for massacre, was found floating in his private estate's zero-gravity pool, his throat neatly slit, his security detail untouched. The assassin had left no trace. A Zathid War Council was held on a remote fortress moon, surrounded by fleets of warships, with every security measure possible in place. It didn't matter. The next morning, every high-ranking official was dead, their bodies found slumped in their chairs as if they had simply fallen asleep. Only their eyes, wide with terror, hinted at the last moments of their lives. It wasn't just military targets anymore. Humanity was dismantling entire civilizations. Supply chains collapsed. Industrial hubs mysteriously lost power at critical moments, leading to catastrophic failures. Trade routes became haunted, with ships vanishing mid-transit, their distress beacons later found drifting in empty space with no crew aboard. The galaxy was unraveling, and no one knew how to stop it. Desperate, the Coalition turned to Galactic Concord, begging for intervention. The Concord, once content to play mediator, was now powerless. Humanity was no longer listening. The panic spread beyond the aggressors. Neutral planets, civilizations that had once dismissed the humans as pacifists, now feared them more than any warlord or conqueror in history. Humanity had always been predictable, diplomatic, patient, rational. But this was something else. And then the final blow came. A transmission, not just a coalition, but to the entire galaxy. Every species, every faction, every world received the message at once. It was not a warning. It was not a plea. It was a statement. This is not war. This is not revenge. This is balance. For every innocent life taken, 100 of yours will be erased. For every moment of suffering inflicted, we will return it 1,000-fold. You have sown the wind. Now you will reap the storm. There was no more bargaining, no more diplomacy. Humanity had decided, and the galaxy would never forget. The galaxy was collapsing under its own terror. Entire civilizations, once proud and unshaken, now lived in a perpetual state of paranoia. The silence of humanity was no longer just an absence. It was a weapon. Every leader, every military commander, every citizen of the coalition knew that death could come at any moment, from anywhere, without warning. Some tried to surrender. The Zathid Dominion sent envoys to Sol, offering reparations beyond measure, groveling for mercy. Their ships never returned. The Vrake Syndicate tried to broker a peace deal through neutral intermediaries, sending lavish tributes, offering entire planets in exchange for humanity's forgiveness. Their messages were met with nothing. Humanity was not seeking peace. Humanity was not seeking revenge. Humanity was erasing threats. The final moments of the Zoran Imperium were recorded in excruciating detail. A fleet of their strongest warships gathered at their home system, their last desperate attempt to defend themselves. It was a fortress, shielded, armed to the teeth, reinforced by every technological advancement they had ever stolen from others. And yet, in a single night, it was gone. The few surviving transmissions were garbled, filled with frantic screams and confused orders. The fleet wasn't engaged in a battle. They weren't overwhelmed by an invading armada. They were simply removed. Their weapons ceased to function. Their ships lost control. One by one, they winked out of existence, as if the void itself had reached out and swallowed them whole. And then, at long last, humanity spoke again. Across every remaining world, every remaining station, a final message was delivered. Not as a threat, not as a demand, but as a decree. It is done. The silence that followed was different. It was not the cold, calculating silence of a hunter waiting for its prey to move. It was not the eerie, anticipatory silence of death creeping in the shadows. It was a silence of judgment, of an execution completed. Humanity did not remain in the shadows forever. One by one, their colonies reappeared. Their stations came back online. Their ships resumed trade. But the galaxy had changed. No one dared provoke them again. No one spoke of the war that never was. No one questioned the cost of testing human patience. Because now, every species, every ruler, every survivor carried the same lesson in their bones. No species would ever forget the moment humanity's patience finally snapped.